So pulling back towards production and all that stuff, what does a day look like sitting down working on this project? What has it looked like, and what does it look like? Because there is a huge amount of commitment to this.
Well,
so what did it look like up, and then what does it look like now?
Well, at first it looked like a whole lot of Google Chat and Skype. For my part, a lot of sample programming would have just been toying around in a workstation and then rendering something every couple of hours, sending it, finding out how much it sucked and in what ways, and then rectifying the suckage to mitigate it. The past month has been a bit of a special case because I'm physically here, and that has largely consisted of many sheets of A3 with hieroglyphics I am becoming less and less proficient in understanding, surrounded by four walls that are becoming increasingly proximal and familiar. But basically...
Be careful because we're clipping.
Oh, right. Oh, I'm speaking... Ah.
No, just basically. It was just basically.
Yes. But basically it's consisted just of... We've had two phases about this because we've treated libretto and orchestration a little bit differently. For libretto, it's largely been we've gone over the excellence score and we've worked out what different extracts entail, what they imply, if they're effective, if they're not, and if they're not, we might try to fit
different lyrics
into parts. Sometimes there are parts we've had to essentially butcher because they just plainly do not work.
Yes.
For the most part, we've done pretty well. We've managed to preserve just about all of it as written, with some exceptions. But the thing with libretto is it's an art. It is not at all precise. Because the libretto is where we have to start not just discussing what fits music, but also what fits a narrative. That is essentially the exposition of the narrative. It's the text actually is semantic. It has to be meaningful. One of the great joys of being a composer of music is you don't necessarily have to encode anything semantic. Music is not semantic. It's expression. If it might encode at best emotion. You cannot convey through music alone anything concrete. You can't communicate ideas directly. The moment you put text to it, it's a whole other ballgame. The text has to be meaningful. So that's why some days when we're discussing libretto, we won't even look at the score. It'll be a day of work might consist of us literally conversing and trying to find out, well, how does this work in this universe? It's almost world building in ways. Orchestration, by contrast, is very systematic because we know that we're writing for an orchestra. All of the characteristics of all the instruments we're writing for are very well defined. Instruments have ranges. Instruments have things they're good at, things they're not. Which is why we've spent about 2.5 weeks, possibly more, on libretto, and maybe 2 days on orchestration.
Yes, because it's faster. And first of all, I'm a composer. I know how to orchestrate. But the lyrics, because I was writing the lyrics, the libretto, as I went. And what happens if you do that for too long and with enough time between, because I haven't been writing for 3 years, that's insanity. If I were writing every day, the entire opera would have been done in 2 months. But that doesn't happen. So the point is that writing the lyrics for such a long time, through such a long period of for such a long work through such a long period of time, you end up realizing, wait, I was doing something with that text like 50 pages ago, and now I'm doing something completely different. And when I was finishing the opera, and in January, the whole text and music and everything, and I realized I have a whole lot of text that has no cohesion in itself, in the sense that the text works by itself, but when you look at the work in it, at the full work, there are no sentences that are very much reused.
There are no textual motifs.
Yes, you use text like you use a motif. Like you have Zelda's Lullaby, for example. Not here, of course, but in Zelda. If you hear Zelda's Lullaby, you are instantly reminded of all the instances where Zelda was, right? So the point here being, you do the same thing with texts in a work that has text and music. You have motifs, you have themes that pertain to characters, and text conveys ideas. And just like in a book or in a movie script, you have lines that are said, which sometimes are recurring and summon similar ideas. And you have to do the same thing that you do in music, that you do in text. You have to restate those lines or restate them in similar ways. For example, one thing I planned already at the beginning, but didn't think too much of it until we reached the end, is that the postman in the trio that is on the demo number 5 that is on YouTube, his one of his last lines is "Let me flee," and I wrote that realizing that at the end of the 3 days, all the postman really wants is to flee Clocktown. So those kind of connections in text, thinking ahead, summoning. How do you call it? You don't call it summoning. You call it wait for it.
Look at us. We can both English.
See, we can English. It's not summoning. It's a pre. Oh God.
It
Well, you get it. It's about
summoning is close enough. Let's go with that.
It's not summoning. It's a sort of you are saying something. You are hinting at something that will come later, basically.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. Thank you. Exactly. Thank you very much. See. Foreshadowing.
You should be doing my job.
Yes, Liam. I am disappointed. I am very disappointed. Yes. So this whole work of making the text as cohesive as the music falls better to someone who is a native speaker and who is a walking thesaurus, because we also had to worry about rhymes and stuff like that in some parts. Not everything rhymes, but some parts rhyme because they're regular. So Liam comes along and does help with that. Now, you were asking about how was a day of work in this, and that predates Liam. When I started, I actually wrote 40 minutes of the opera in 2 weeks. In 2011. So everything from... Let me see. Sorry, you hear some noise for a moment here. Just check. Let's just take the... no. Oh, that's my phone. Everything... Let me just see. Where is this? Oh, I can hear it here, right. It doesn't hear it here. Okay.
Yes, you're wearing headphones.
Yes. So the first 40 minutes... Yeah. So everything from the beginning of the opera until Odolva and the Deku, the fight, the dance sequence, was written in 2 weeks. Because it was Christmas vacation, holidays. It was holidays. I didn't have classes. And I was in the mood. I was in the zone. So let's write. And go. And then school started, the academy specifically. At the time I was at the academy. And obviously the pace gets cut. I start rethinking things, and I talked to Miguel Jesus about it, and he notices some things in the choir writing that weren't ideal. And when you start understanding how flawed what you're doing is, you start being more careful. So from that moment on, things started to go way slower. And then I had a huge block in Act 2. Basically, a day of work in Majora for me was literally this. Waking up, getting breakfast, bringing the breakfast to this room, making music for 14 hours non-stop, except for bathroom breaks and dinner, and going to sleep. That's all. Nothing else. Sitting in front of the computer, and the average was 2 minutes of music a day. So 14 hours, or between 10 to 14 hours for 2 minutes of music for full orchestra. The reason I took so long was because my computer was a piece of crap back then. In 2013, I got a better one, and it still only reduced the period to 8 to 10 hours. 8 to 10 hours a day for 2 minutes of music for full orchestra and choir and everything. Because it would go faster if I didn't have to think about what people are saying. Because I write instrumentals pretty quickly. Odolva was very easy to write. I just had to figure out how to mix the Deku Palace theme with the Odolva theme, and then the rest came out on its own. But stuff like the recitativo where Cafe is alone, and the mother and Andrew and the Stockpot trio and all that stuff, when there's a lot of people talking, sometimes it's not that easy to, I have to know what they're saying, so it slows everything down, because I'm thinking about orchestration, and then suddenly I'm like, okay, I wrote this music, but I still don't know what they're saying. So it's a sort of, I can't really explain to you what comes first, if it's the music or the text. Sometimes it's the text, sometimes the music, sometimes they just sort of come at the same time, and it just, I don't know, it just works. So
It just happens.
It just happens. Well, kind of, yes. So, and then you had enormous periods of nothing. Until I didn't write a note from March 2014 until January 2015. Nothing. It was just trying to get demos out, because I had reached a roadblock in Act 3 after Pamela, because I knew what I wanted to do, I just didn't know how. And Act 3 is very dissonant, very noisy, but noisy in the sense that it's very
it's unsettling.
Not tonal. It's a bit more aggressive, less coherent. Let's put it that way. It's not tonal music, basically, and not modal either. It's just weird. So, in some bits, of course. So, I was struggling with the notation, I was struggling with how to do things, and I needed time to think. I took 8 months to think over it, and then in January, because I knew Liam was coming supposedly on February, I turned it to 11 and wrote every day for 35 days, and I finished Act 3 almost until the end. I needed Liam to come here first to make sure I knew the way it would end. I needed the exact text to know how to finish the opera, the act. So there's actually still is a little bit, like 10 minutes left of Act 3 to finish, which now I know how I'm going to do, because we already have the text. When he leaves, I will be doing that. So it was basically that, waking up 8 hours to 10 hours, 2 minutes for 2 minutes of music. And it goes like that for a while. And then I discovered that Liam wasn't coming in February, and I spent a month looking at the ceiling, because I was like, shit, now it's done. I can't do anything else. I don't have singers. There's no singers to record. Miguel is busy. And, okay, I did commissions and other stuff, of course. But the point is, in terms of Majora, I couldn't do anything, and I was pumped with energy to do something about it. But I had to wait another month. But now it's all been discharged. I'm quite exhausted, actually, at this point.
A good exhausted, though.
A good exhausted, yes. But it's not over. Yes. It's not over, because when Liam goes away, the three of us, me, Miguel, and Liam, be engraving in the final score with a program called Lily Pond everything that we corrected. So it's like rewriting most of the opera from the beginning. But now there is nothing to change in terms of creative aspects.
It's completely systematic. It's pretty much just reading notes we've now written. There's nothing to discuss. There's nothing to debate about. There's no roadblocks of that kind. It's pretty much just input.
Yes, just input. Writing.
Just type it into a machine.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, well, in the real world, most of us have jobs and personal lives and things like that. How does that play factor into all this?
They usually do have to come first in my case, because this is not my day job. In fact, it's not the day job of most people, save certain people who will remain nameless.
It's not my day job either. I'll explain in a moment. You first.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm still a student, so for a lot of this, because I am blessed and cursed with the fact that pretty much, except for the past month, I've had to work on this project entirely by correspondence. So, in one sense, that means I have a little more room to work at my leisure, or it's more plausible that I would need to do that. I mean, I'm not physically there with things. I'm not. It's not something that you block out in a day. It's just something I get around to as I can. I'm come from the other side of the world. On the other hand, it becomes harder to sustain a pace because it's harder to do something that you just plainly need to invest a certain number of hours in, get through and be done with it, present it, and then refine it over time. And if you're doing it in an ad hoc fashion, if say I lived in Portugal, or indeed anyone who did live in Portugal who could regularly visit Miguel, would have the advantage of being able to say block a day in and say I'll get this much done in a regular fashion. You can get a sort of you can get a regime going, a
routine.
A routine. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I didn't really have that luxury with this. Aside from the fact that I work, I have a job when I'm home. I don't at this exact moment, but I do when I'm not on the other side of the planet. So it's harder to keep things going, and in fact, I fell into something of a hiatus for more than a few months through 2014, particularly.
About Majora or about
Majora?
Yes. But there was not much for you to do at this point either, it was good.
It was good in the sense that it wasn't bad.
Yes, of course. My case is simpler because I am lucky at this point. This is my parents' house. My brother's behind me. My mother's in the living room. Nothing to hide, friends. The idea is that I am still at a point in which I can be doing my things at home. So I better take advantage of that and try to build something with it so that I can then when I do become independent, I have something to hold on to. I don't have to start from nothing. Because if Majora does hit the stage, I automatically, not automatically, but I officially have a staged work. As a composer, that's important. Especially something of this size. So I do not take lightly the fact that I still need other people I'm dependent on people to live, in the sense that I would rather be doing things that would help me become independent in that sense. I do have commissions. I do music by commission. In fact, I released something for an advertisement, an ad for some sort of sauce for whatever. What is it? It's a salsa. Salsa sauce, yes, whatever. I made some music. My mother, she's a painter. She did some animation, and so we both got paid for it. Simple. It becomes sort of a family business in the sense. Little animation and whatever. So I do already, of course, have work of my own, but it's not a job, meaning it's not a routine. I don't get up every morning to go to an office. I did at some point. I had to pay for the academy. And I'm praying that I don't have to again, but eventually I might have to, of course, because everyone has to. But yes, I believe that is it. It's just, since I have this opportunity, I'd rather be doing this than just sit around and play games all day.
All right. Well, so out of all this, effort and all this work and everything, when all is possibly going to be said and done, and let's say this takes off and everything went on stage and all that stuff, what is the one thing that you're most excited for, both of you, to have come to life in this project? I mean, I know you might not be able to specifically say if there's spoilers or anything like that, but what on stage are you really, is there a spot that you're just like, I want to see that come to life, I visually want to have this part more than anything?
Without spoilers,
how set in that question are you on visually?
Well, loosely. I say visually because I couldn't think of a proper term. It's the whole experience of that moment.
I would really like to see how the bloody hell we get Cafe's Dream played.
I mean, how plays is played fine.
Building the instrument, seeing it played, that will be a marvel of its own.
Did you see Liam's Q&A? I'm asking you. Damn it, I forgot your name. It's with J. You
got the J part. It's Jordan.
I was gonna say Jason. Thank God you caught me. Okay, good. Jordan.
Don't worry, I had a customer at work call me Jason today, so I've had that enough today.
Okay. Well, have you seen, Jordan, have you seen the Q&A where Liam explains what the instrument that makes those clanging sounds in Cafe's Dream is?
I vaguely remember it. I know I've seen all the Q&As,
Okay,
but
so basically
I can't
that
recall.
instrument is not an existing instrument. What I did was I got a cowbell sound and I detuned it by about 12 semitones, which makes it sound very fat and very clanging like a huge pipe.
That's
because
a few more than 12.
No, there were 12.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It was 12. It was maybe the lowest part of the cowbell. I don't know. The point is, that's how that's what it is in terms of a digital sound, what you hear there. But I know it's possible. And one day, Liam went to the park with a hammer. Go on.
Not a hammer. I had drumsticks on me.
Yes, but what did you do?
I happened to idly tap it because I was practicing rudiments at the time. And I just noticed the way it resonated sounded similar to what he'd done in an earlier version of Cafe's Dream. And so...
You tapped what?
I was sitting on the bench. And I was the way park benches, or this particular bench is structured, was the construction is all steel, and the actual seating is a whole lot of they're essentially just steel bars that are welded onto a frame. So, but for most of their length, they're quite free. It looks a little bit like a glockenspiel in that they're all parallel. And so I happened to strike one of them, and because they've got a fairly regular geometry, they also have a reasonably definite pitch. And so that made me think, well, if this is... Yes, I'm being shown pictures.
Yes, go on.
Yes.
Go on.
So that made me think, well, these are fairly readily available. They make approximately the kind of sound we want. Percussion is not a lot of other instruments have immensely. They've got centuries of tradition of instrument making, and there's all these intricacies. Like a lot of wind keying has had a lot of innovation. Percussion is fucking hitting things. It is not. It is not more glamorous than that. We have some truly. There's the precise and subtle art of playing all sorts of drums very carefully. There's mallet percussion, which is its own art, but ultimately we are about hitting things. So if you hit a thing and it sounds good, you may call it an instrument. So
That's literally it, yeah.
So it's not more complex than that. If we found something that sounds approximately like what we want, it can be turned to the purpose, and it's not a difficult thing to come by. If we can fit a park bench with probably some modifications, and we're now thinking possibly for some parts of it, oil drums filled with differing amounts of water might be more appropriate. But essentially, if you strike it and it makes the noise you want, it's an instrument. It works.
So you're curious basically to see what instrument we would end up finding.
Yeah.
To play Cafe's Dream. Yes, I've sent you a picture of a park bench, Jordan, in case you have never seen one.
I see it. I'm gonna throw that up in the video. So that way people can see what we're looking at.
But yeah, we are thinking about that, and Liam's Q&A was excessively verbose and funny about it, but it actually was the first idea, and we're thinking that maybe oil drums with water in them may make a similar sound.
Yes. Well, probably the deeper clang might still be the bench. Because it's harder to tune that than drums, because you have two aspects to your sound, was what we were thinking.
Are you thinking about welding a bench to an oil drum?
Why not? If it all fits.
Well, whatever we're gonna call it, whatever its technical name is, we're gonna call it Bob.
And that is how it will appear on the score.
Yes, it will be scored for Bob. I don't know why. It was a bench.
Excellent.
Actually, there was a point. It was bench. What was it? Bench. Bench operated. No, I forgot.
It was something big old bench or something.
Yeah, big old bench. That's it.
Something stupid.
Yeah, big old bench. We don't know what it is. Well, that's his.
We have to make sure that all the musicologists in 2 or 3 centuries have something to cringe about.
Yeah. So you have Bob. to look forward to, and I have something I can't reveal. So I have to.
Oh.
So I have to think of something else. Let me see. The second thing. Well, I want to see the whole opera. I don't care. I will be heartbroken if anything has to go away. But let me see.
Unless it's cafe.
Cafe?
Unless it's cafe, he has to go away.
I mean, he has to go away. Well, I'm not. Actually, yes. Ironically, I'm not I'm not a big fan of the character of Cafe. Actually, there's a reason the opera is called Majora and not Cafe and Andrew. Let me see.
Unfortunately, if we cut cafe, it will be a very short opera.
Well, a very boring opera, and nothing happens. Well, something happens, but there's no lead. Let me see quickly. Let me think. Thinking through all the numbers.
Maybe a prop or something? Or?
Oh, a prop. But that's also spoilers. All spoilers. Well, no, actually, I would really love to see the clock tower on stage, like properly in front of me. That would, because that is intended to be a prop. In fact, a fixed prop, because stages have different depth, and whenever you're in Clocktown, it's the only time you're seeing the set to its full depth. So Clocktown would have to actually be a physical set.
And indeed functional.
And functional, basically, because if you can put something there, you can make it turn all you want. It's not hard, it's just because it just has to turn, basically.
It's just a question of engineering.
Yes. The people have done way more complex stuff on stage.
Yes. There's a truly frightening set I've seen for a production of Wagner, which consists essentially of this row of almost, I'm not sure how to describe them. They're almost like steel girders, but they have people on them. There must be over a dozen of them, and they can rotate almost. They can go vertical to horizontal and more with people on them. Compared to some truly avant-garde stagings we've seen, we're actually kind of conservative. We fly backdrops, we shift in large moving, mostly architectural sets. We're not doing anything too out of the ordinary in that sense.
I'm gonna send you. Wait a moment. I'm gonna send. You gotta put that on the video too. This is one for the Wagner opera.
It's madness.
It's enormous. But the thing is, they keep that prop for the entirety of the opera, and they use it for projections.
All four of them, to be specific. This is for Der Ring.
Yes,
Der Ring des Nibelungen.
Yeah, it's 4 operas. It's enormous. It's that whole thing of Wagner. That's 4 operas in a row, and they all
15 hours.
It's 15 hours of it's.
Not all in one evening.
No, of course. 4 separate days.
unless you are really, really dedicated and your musicians have no lives and are really, really desperate.
That thing in the back, the dragon is simple. Okay, anyone can do that for any production. But that huge thing in the back that you can see now, probably, there are all independent platforms. They all spin. It's insane. It's a machine. It's an enormous thing.
And not only can they spin, they can bear actors on it while they do.
And some actors are suspended by...
in the very first scene of Das Rheingold involves the Rhine Maidens, the protector spirits of the River Rhine, who protect the titular Rheingold. They are actually attached to it as it rotates backwards, because they're supposed to appear like they're swimming. So it's quite a versatile, minimal set.
Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. I'm gonna send you some more pictures. You can use whichever you want, because they show different ways of using the set. We would not go this far.
There's
no point.
Beyond. Wagner has the upshot of several centuries of being performed, so at this point anything seems to go.
Yeah, exactly. But no, there is one thing. I think the hardest challenge, actually, and I can say that because it's something obvious. The hardest challenge is actually the fact that the clock tower is intended to rotate.
Yes.
Or rather, the clock face is intended to spin up to become,
to become a platform that can actually bear 1 or 2 people on top of it.
Yes. What does not have to happen specifically is that huge bobbing head, the rock at the top, the weight. it does not have to rotate backwards. It would have to just go back inside, simply because it cannot rotate backwards if the clock tower is against the end of the stage. It's simple. But yeah, I think that's something I would really like to see: the clock tower on stage, spinning and rotating in Carnival. I think it's basically something I would really like to see. There's something else I'd really like to see, but I'm not gonna tell you what it is.
Yeah.
Right, we'll have to do a follow-up once we can actually talk about what that is.
Fingers crossed.
That would be really awesome to see that clock tower. I'll take one for my room.
Yeah, the sets are actually you were talking about cutting corners before, and I was talking about the fact that I am in fact cutting as many corners as possible in the sets, because I know it's hard to manage a lot of moving pieces on stage, and we did find a way to build most sets out of nothing but 4 pieces that are actually that can actually be rolled onto and out of the stage, with some exceptions, I think, with some little very loose small details.
There's a couple of things that are their own props, but they're not particularly elaborate. The most elaborate sets are essentially unitary. They have a front that is one thing and a rear that is another for the most part. Some additionally have interiors, but
it's like one thing is one thing. It's a prop that is one thing from the front, the other from the rear, like Liam said, and it is three-dimensional. It's important to mention that, because my problem with projections is the lack of three-dimensionality. You do not see of depth. You don't see characters in the sets. You know. You don't. You. It's just something projected. Projections work. They will have to be used. They work for some things. But if you want to have a town on stage, you're not going to project the town in the background. They have nothing else on stage. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Understandable.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, here's a question.
Yes.
All right. This is a little bit. It's on topic but off topic. So.
L-A-S-V-E-G-A-S spells Vegas, a town where you are sure to have a ball. A city that's as cool as it is hot. That's Vegas. Place a bet and you can win it all. L-A-S-V-E-G-A-S spells Vegas, a place where you can party all night long.